Welcome to the New Warehouse Podcast, the podcast for those that are curious about what's possible inside their four walls. Before we get into this episode, let's hear a word from our sponsors that make this all possible. Do you feel like automation is unapproachable? Well, Big Joe Autonomous Solutions is changing that with the AP44. The AP44 is a fully autonomous pallet truck built for real work. Floor-to-floor pallet transportation, no infrastructure changes, no complicated IT project. Setup happens right at the onboard touchscreen. If you can use a smartphone, you can use the AP44. Just select a mission and the AP44 gets moving. Easy switch between fully autonomous, semi-autonomous, and manual mode on this pallet jack keeps it versatile. Learn more at BigJoeForklifts.com. That's BigJoeForklifts.com. Are you shipping orders? Of course you are. Are you getting cash back on your parcel spend? With Dash.fi, you can maximize cash back with their special focus on shipping spend. Leverage their corporate card platform to get cash back on your shipping spend and utilize their AI-powered audit tools to make sure your finances are tight. Don't leave money on the table. Check out Dash.fi at Dash.fi. Did you check your clipboard today? Throw that thing in the trash. It's time for a new way to run your dock and yard operations with Conduit. Streamline your dock scheduling, driver check-ins, yard management, and photo proof into one digital platform with Conduit's easy-to-use system. If you're still using clipboards, spreadsheets, whiteboards, or nothing at all, it's time to cut the chaos and get on Conduit. Go live in days, not months, at www.helloconduit.com/new warehouse. That's www.helloconduit.com/new warehouse. Temp agency let you down again? It's time for a different approach. Spotwork is the industrial labor marketplace built for modern warehouse operations. When you need available workers fast, Spotwork lets you post a job and get to hundreds of spotters in minutes. Spotwork's job fulfillment rates are above 95% across 35 markets in the U.S. No agency markups, no long-term commitments, and real human support around the clock. Head to spotwork.co to get the labor you need now, and make sure to mention the New Warehouse for a special promo. Thank you to our sponsors, and now let's get to the podcast.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by two guests, and we're going to talk a little bit about some projects that they've worked on together. And we're going to be joined by Jeff Messenger. He is the VP of Reverse Logistics and Facilities and Maintenance at Pattern. And we're going to talk a little bit about that title as well, because I think that's an interesting combination. And we're also going to be joined by Kyle McCarty, who's a Senior Field Application Engineer at Toyota Automated Logistics. They've done some projects together within Pattern's operations. So we're going to dive into a little bit about what spurred some of that and how they've kind of solved some of the problems that we're looking at to get to higher level of throughput, et cetera, and find out what that was all about. So welcome to the show, Jeff and Kyle. How are you both?
Thank you. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
happy to get you both on. Happy to talk to you, and very interested to learn about how you've all kind of worked together. Love to dig into some of the different projects that happen within operations and how they come about, and kind of the results of those two as well. So why don't we kick things off first here with you, Jeff? Tell us a little bit about Pattern. We've had Pattern on the show previously, but for maybe people that aren't familiar with what you all do, tell us a little bit about your business and what you do.
So Pattern is an e-commerce accelerator. It's, I think, the premier service for growing a brand online for sales. Mm-hmm. And we've had a lot of success over the past 10 plus years, but we are really starting to embrace new technologies. I think we have really interesting things to say in the world of AI as that's transforming e-commerce. But we partner directly with brands to help grow their sales online. And we do that with a full suite of services from marketing, advertising. And then really over the last 4 years, we've transformed our operations to help with right-sizing the amount of inventory that goes into the marketplace, as well as how quickly it moves. So we try to solve the executive dilemma in e-commerce and helping them find out how to retool their business for online sales versus brick and mortar or otherwise. So we've established some really key partnerships over the years, not just with brands, but also with strategic partnerships, Toyota Automated Logistics being one of them that's really helped us grow. So I would say, put most simply, we are the premier accelerator service in e-commerce. All
right, definitely. And tell us a little bit about kind of your warehouse operations, like the physical aspect of it.
The physical aspect, we are a global presence. So we have operations and physical presence in the EU, in the UK, in Asia, Australia, but definitely a concentration in the US as we're headquartered out of Lehigh in Utah. For our sites, we have one very big established warehouse in Hebron, Kentucky, just south of the CVG Airport, Cincinnati area. And since I joined in 2023, we also added operations in North Las Vegas. We've had a relocation from one side of Toronto to another. We have kind of a test loop demo facility very nearby Lehigh as well. And then we're in the middle of launching a greenfield automated cross-dock center in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And so definitely a decent amount of operations there, a decent amount of volume moving through those, as well as you're dealing with e-commerce and Amazon and things like that. So now, Kyle, tell us a little bit about, from your perspective, Toyota Automated Logistics, not a new business, but a new kind of name, right? So tell us a little bit about Toyota Automated Logistics, the kind of bringing together of a couple different companies under that umbrella, and what it is that you all do.
Yeah, absolutely. Toyota Automated Logistics recently rebrand launch in April of this year. So relatively new, but bringing a ton of experience. So Bastion Solutions, Wanderlanda's warehousing business, and Via Store, all under one brand, collectively over 250 years of experience in logistics automation. So a lot of firepower there combined. And the rebrand really gives us an opportunity to transcend out of logistics, and a lot of our customers are first time into automation. And when they see a brand like Toyota, it really excites them because it's synonymous with reliable performance and quality. So really that's what we're bringing to the marketplace. I think our relationship that we've developed with Pattern kind of shows that we've partnered with them at their facility in Las Vegas to start, and then expanded a lot of the facilities that Jeff mentioned to support those operations as well. So we, as an integrator, we bring a lot of these different technologies to the market, and we integrate it with intelligent software, controls, and lifecycle support services for the long term.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think it makes so much sense to bring kind of those businesses under one umbrella, as you all have done recently in the last couple months here. And now I want to talk a little bit about some of these projects and how you all have worked together. But before we do that, I want to talk about Jeff's title a little bit, because I think it's very interesting. As VP of Reverse Logistics and Facilities and Maintenance, and it's kind of like they gave you almost everything that is like messy, kind of in the in the warehouse, I would say there, Jeff. So tell us a little bit about that, like your role and how do these, kind of two different parts of the operation, reverse logistics and the facilities and maintenance side. Like, I mean, how do they come together under like one umbrella for you?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'll try to be brief, but you already hit on really the main theme, which is they're fairly messy areas of the logistics and operations field. They do require very high cross-functional awareness. I think one of the things that serves me well in a role like this is I'm really an operator at heart. That's where I did the bulk of my career in e-commerce and logistics. But also the simple version is I did reverse logistics and customer returns in the very beginning of my post-military career. And then I did reliability and maintenance near the end, not end of career, but end of 12-year stop at Amazon. So those things, they don't have a lot of overlap in day-to-day or tactical responsibilities. So I have to very heavily rely on key leaders that I've been able to hire. And thankfully, I have a very strong team. And it's a lot of fun to work with them. But thankfully, Rob, our COO at Pattern, who I think you've met before, he puts a lot of trust in me to solve those, pretty messy, complex problems with a lot of independence. But they all have to speak with other aspects of the operation. It has to be very aware of what parts of direct-to-consumer businesses are growing and how that changes not just our equipment profile, but our returns profile. Topology, location, placement, capacity, all those things play into it. So I think I'm one part operator, one part skeptic, but maybe the most important part that might even beat out talent or skill is enthusiast. It's very easy for me to geek out on those subjects and go really deep and long. Yeah. But I think that's the rarest part to find rather than the skill is someone who really cares about those topics deeply and wants to stay close to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an amazing thing because it does take a unique mind to be like, oh, I want to geek out on returns and reverse logistics. Most people are like, keep like returns in that corner over there and I'm good. Right. But I think that's like fantastic that you're into that and you like to do that. And we love to geek out here on the podcast. So feel free to geek out whenever you want. But, so tell us a little bit about it, cause I'm guessing, from the automation perspective and working with Toyota, that's probably leaning more on your kind of facilities side of things, right? So tell us a little bit about, from Pattern's perspective in your operations, how are you approaching automation and how did that ultimately lead to creating the relationship with Toyota?
Certainly a lot more hand in hand between facilities and maintenance and, construction, design and build out and startup processes. So I think unintentionally, I probably come in with a maintenance first mindset. Like, how do we keep this running? Because ultimately it's got to serve our stakeholders and customers and partners. So designing in reliability from the start is definitely a big theme. And Kyle already hit on that. So that's one of the things that makes them a great partner. But the way that we think about automation, I mentioned there's a bit of skepticism out there because I think a lot of us in, let's say, Rob's inner circle on the ops side, I think a lot of us have seen a lot of automation theater out there or a lot of gadget fixation, and it can be very easy to become a hammer and see everything as a nail when you think, hey, ROI, we can, repurpose a few more roles. We can save more dollars this way. We can increase speed. And that's all true, but bolting things to concrete comes with a lot of trade-offs. It may not be a one-way door, but it is a long-term relationship, and that can get messy if it's not well planned out. So I think we leverage our experience pretty effectively to not just chase shiny objects or new tech when it hits the market or gets exciting. I do rely on Kyle a lot to introduce us or expose us to the technology that'd be relevant for the application. So I have to be cautious when we put out something like an RFP or RFQ to not prescribe solutions, but really be intentional about the requirements and offer suggestions. And it also takes a lot of cultivating business understanding with your partners so that they can not just address your questions and requests, but also yes and you and improvise into a better design or solution. The last thing I would add is I was fascinated when I first got into maintenance with condition-based maintenance and a lot more IoT, mechatronics, Industry 4.0, all of that stuff to where you can really reduce the proactive maintenance mindset and really let the equipment speak back to you. And that has a ton of interesting overlap with OEE, with performance, throughput, uptime, mean time between failure, all that stuff. So I think the part that's becoming more cost effective or just cheap are sensor based awareness. Because at the end of it, I think you can make really great automation if it's not giving you diagnostics and feedback on how it's going. That just becomes really, really risky. Problematic is maybe an undersell.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's such an interesting kind of take on it, what you said there about, thinking about it from the maintenance perspective first, right? And I think that, to your point, I mean, there is a lot of like shiny object syndrome going on out there just because there is so much like exciting, cool to look at, very visual kind of things happening in the operations world from an automation robotics perspective, right? Just the physical kind of coolness of some of it just in general, right? But we can get lost in that a little bit. So I'm curious, like Kyle, from your perspective, what is your take on that, and how do you prevent someone like Jeff or other customers from chasing after the shiny object and saying like, okay, well this is what like could really work, right? How do you approach that?
And it is a tough balance to take, right? You have customers that are really excited about their operations and what the future looks like, and a lot of what we do enables growth and enables efficiencies that customers love to be able to show off. So when you're doing your research into new tech and automation, there's a lot out there and there's a lot to see too. You go online and YouTube and now ChatGPT and AI and all these suggestions on, I'm going to feed it. And there is a positive feedback loop where there seem to be solutions that can perfectly fit your operations. In my role, I love hearing about new operations and Jeff, especially, hey, where's your business headed? How are you going to get there? What do you think might be best fit? Because I'm coming in as a technology expert, but Jeff lives and dies the operations of the business. When I learn what he does and what they're doing, maybe I can then tailor technologies they're not thinking about or not considering that might be better fit than what they're seeing out there in the marketplace. That is that shiny new object. So it's a tightrope to walk. We certainly listen to our customers first, but ultimately the data, long-term reliability, satisfaction of the customer, we take everything into balance as we make suggestions. But it is a very collaborative approach, and ultimately we want something that will be there for the long term to help the business grow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that makes a ton of sense in that approach. And also you said something I think really key in there is that, a lot of times the customers they're coming to you, they don't necessarily know everything that is available out there because I mean, there is like just a plethora of offerings at this point. And even like, if you're like, all right, well, I want to go down this route, then there's, 10 to 15 or more vendors that are also like doing that. And then it's like, oh, well, then which vendor do I even go with here? Like, what's the right solution? What's the difference? And, so that discovery, I think, is a whole nother step within that, right? To be able to do that. So now you all have done a couple projects together, I think here. So maybe Jeff, why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about like what was, the initial problems that you were working with or trying to solve for that led you ultimately to work with Kyle and the team at Toyota Automated Logistics?
I almost wish Kyle and I wrote down an answer to this question and blind, and then both see how close we got, because I can tell he's probably thinking of 3 or 4 examples right now where I came and asked for something specific and he said, don't do that. This is better.
Okay. Let's hear it.
So I think maybe the most vivid example, it's not super like sexy or cool, but it's around a bi-directional shoe sorter. And so my role also, puts a new interesting hat on in these conversations where I meet with my stakeholders and operations, and I say, okay, we want to launch a facility, we want to do a retrofit project. So what are the requirements? And I try to keep it very on the rails. How many diverts do we need? Do we want zero pressure? Do we want optical character recognition in the scanners? Do we want this much lag? So, we get as many of the requirements as we can. And then that's where I take that away and I start getting more creative, and I throw all the ideas at the wall with Kyle and say, look, my team is asking for, I'll pick a random number, 15 diverts that fluid load into dock doors. I think that'll be okay for a while, but I think we could add some insurance, some cheap insurance, if we could find a way to divert both directions off the sorter. So maybe we chase narrow belt, even though it's slower throughput, maybe we chase cross belt. So help me price these different solutions, Kyle, and we'll determine a bake-off winner. And I was actually trying to kind of push off the idea of shoe sorters because familiarity, I think, tends to be more of treated as a headwind. And really, in this case, shoe style sorters were something me and a lot of the other ops leaders were familiar with. And so we actually decided to embrace that more as a strength. We know this machine. We know we can train in Vegas, our new ops team, and they'll be familiar with it. They'll understand the quirks. The maintenance team can train on similar equipment as well. We've got spare parts parity we can transfer across the network. But something not a single one of us at Pattern were aware of were shoe sorters that were bidirectional. It's probably been around for a long time. I'm not sure how common they are, but I heard multiple reactions like, I didn't even know that was a thing. That's amazing. Yeah. And it really unlocked our ability to be true closed loop end-to-end cross-dock if we wanted to. We want to maintain a lot of flexibility with the automation because most of our tasks are not automate for the next 7 years or the full life of the lease and forget about it. So I think unlocking that ability to really be hands-free and phase in new technologies that only further enable that or gain more entitlement. I think that's maybe the best example I could think of was just a simple solution, met our familiarity criteria, also met my sort of bonus insurance policy, and it became a good win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really interesting point there. And honestly, I would say that this is one of the reasons I started this podcast in the first place, because there was a realization that, some of the things out there, like if I didn't look like beyond the experiences that I had in my company, is like, I probably wouldn't even know that, there is, in your case, like the bidirectional shoe sorter, like that's a thing, like, and maybe it's been around for a long time, but it's like, oh, well, I never got exposed to that. Like, so how would I know about that? Right. In that sense. So it's very interesting, like kind of that discovery piece, going back to that and really understanding that. So maybe Kyle, give us from your perspective, right? When Jeff first came to you and said like, okay, like this is what we're trying to approach and this is what we think we want. How did you kind of evaluate the situation and really go about assessing like, all right, well, this will be the right solution, or these are the potential options for you?
I think when it comes to what we designed, especially for our first engagement with the Greenfield site in Las Vegas, anytime that we're coming in as a systems integrator for the first time, you need to do a ton of relationship building and understanding and really getting into the meat of your operations and the long-term view. And I think we did a really good job, and not just me, but the team behind me, our controls engineers, our project engineers, people asking the right questions so that the business goals that Jeff lays out and maybe some technical throughput details and product details are there at the upfront, but we need to know and dig in deeper. So we actually had a lot of collaboration and design review meetings with much larger teams than just us, where people chimed in, and that allowed us to hone in on a solution that was going to be good day one, reliable for the long term, with flexibility to expand. And we've already started to explore some of that. So we didn't really say, this is going to work today. And we know in e-commerce, and especially with a lot of the brands you represent, that what they're doing today is not going to be what they're doing next year and 3 years and 5 years. So we need to be flexible. And I think we did a great job at building that out. But yeah, it's a collaborative, fun process. And the way that work has transitioned more virtual in the past few years, getting on site, being in person. We met at our headquarters in just north of Indianapolis in Carmel. Mm-hmm. Those in-person meetings are invaluable. The on-site time to understand, walk the floor with the operations team, you can learn more in an hour on site than 10 virtual meetings. So yeah, that was key as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, something key in there that you mentioned is the flexibility aspect. Like how do we build in flexibility for growth or change into the future? So maybe tell us a little bit about that. Like, how do you bake in to account like, okay, well, this is like what they need now. Like this is what Pattern needs right now. But we know that, as you said, like their business is going to shift a little bit. There's going to be some changes potentially. Like how do we, design the solution that has that flexibility to either grow easily or adjust a little bit if there needs to be some adjustment. Maybe it's, I don't know, size of boxes that are going through or size of SKUs or something like that. How do you design around that and make sure that's a little, I guess, almost open-ended in a sense?
I would say it's a lot of what if questions. So we get the original parameters and then we say, what if your box size shrinks? What if your box size grows? What if throughput doubles? How do we handle that? So you ask those questions, you say, that's not a realistic thing. It's not going to happen, but what if? And then if it's a small tweak to the conveyor design of moving from 3-inch roller centers to 2-inch roller centers, so you get better product control for the future on smaller products that might not be running today, but are there in the future, you're already accounting for it. If you're allowing space for additional merge points into the sorter, because, in the future, we might need a different pack out or a different prep area that needs to be integrated into sortation. What was really great that I thought our team did in the design process for the Greenfield site in Las Vegas was we ran simulations. So different process flows from different picking and pack out and receiving areas into a merge point. We can play with different scenarios to say, well, if this changes and we're seeing more volume over here or over there, how is that going to break the system? And can we account for that now? So those, design tools being done on the upfront before it's a physical, monolith in the facility, you can make those tweaks and changes so that it's more adaptable in the future.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think the what if question is the big thing there. Like, well, we may not foresee this, but you never know, right? So, like, what would happen if this did happen there? So, Jeff, I mean, from your perspective, like, how do you think about that as the one that will feel those changes and go through those changes? I mean, how do you approach that to make sure, like, all right, we're investing in something that is not only going to be effective for us now, but is also going to be effective as we evolve and we change and our growth, continues to grow and things of that nature?
It's a tough question. My mind goes to 3 places immediately, so I'll be brief as I can on those. One, I would say the key assumptions have to be very well defined with ranges and not just a single number. 2, I would say, if it's future capability we don't yet need, that's something we're very sensitive to, and not to repeat a previous answer about avoiding shiny objects. But I think that we are highly aware of where we are in our automation maturity life cycle. So just by going and buying the latest stuff and having a huge concrete footprint in a country is not success. That's just a lot of assets and investment.
Yeah.
So I would say being aware of when we need that future capability in the future and not now. And then third, I would say it's a challenge of trade-offs. So the quick examples, number one, I think one of the best questions challenges I've heard from our founder and one of our founders and CEO, Dave Wright, is what's the key assumption in this proposal? What must be true for all of these things to actually materialize? And how sensitive is it? If that's a sensitivity analysis or if it's just 10x that, and then what happens to your model? I always think that's a really hard question to answer perfectly, but it's the right question. And sometimes signing on the dotted line for the contract of this equipment is the most painful and long process out of all the many steps. I'd say future capability, something like I mentioned OCR earlier on scanners. That's something that we don't have to have today, but we think about the assets or components that we select for something like a vision tunnel or a kick out point or an induct point, and Kyle proposing like, this is something that can help capture more entitlement for you. So you can get, this component now, and then we can phase in the software development and the process for that year 2 or 3. So that's something that we actually did in the past year. And then third, I would say even like Kyle and I were meeting yesterday about, a rapid solution, quick deployment project. And we treated that flexibility as a secondary goal, kind of a lightning round. What if we did this? What if we did this? What if we did this? Like Kyle said. And then we might select one of those, say this can maybe solve most of that secondary goal, like an easternmost induct point that adds, 50 feet of linear feet of conveyor. And then you have that in case your storage operation shifts north or something. So kind of some vague dummy terms there, but I think it's a multifaceted answer and approach when the most relevant. But yeah, it's tricky, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting to kind of navigate that, especially in, you're dealing with e-commerce primarily as you talked about, right? And obviously that is like shifting, changing all the time, and different brands, different SKU profiles, different product types, different handling things. Obviously, like there's a lot that goes on in terms of like parcel shifting on like who's got better rates versus these rates, and how do we, talking about sortation, how do we divert to like the right carrier? Do we need to change who it's going to today versus a week from now because the rates have changed, or whatever the case may be? So there's a lot to think about in that. As you said, it's multifaceted to be able to do that. So as you think about kind of the approach, because you mentioned in here both the greenfield and the brownfield as well, right? Do you think about automation differently when you're going towards a brand new greenfield facility versus brownfield? How do you think about that, Jeff?
I would say the simple version is greenfield might be a little bit more susceptible to big swings or bold bets where we want to introduce a new technology. And when we're redeploying or retrofitting a site, that's where I might use terms like basic warehouse building blocks. I want something that can be remobilized to a future location in case, the application shifts. And we're really, really excited about the go live on our new sorter system in Pennsylvania. But as we talk about it, as we look at our topology and future launches, and we think, okay, we like this size of capacity in marketplaces, then we have to think about, or I guess we have to flag that as unproven, like the simulations. And also to second something Kyle mentioned with the simulations, I mean, that is a game-changing part of the equation. And Kyle and I have spent a lot of time talking about that. It can really boost the confidence, especially of, C-suite leaders who, don't have the time or interest to get all the way involved into conveyor design and ship sorters or logistics in general. And so to be able to see them a flyby 3D video with token generated different kinds of cartons and parcels coming from different induct points that may look the same, but they travel and behave differently. So simulation is a huge part of that. It makes us a lot bolder to take those big swings. And also, being cognizant, if it's a brownfield, what more do we need out of that site? Because it's already mature. We're able to sweat the assets a little bit more. And so now we just need some tweaks or refinements. And sometimes speed is a really critical part of it. I think it should rarely be a critical part of it, but a lot of times it can make the decision for you.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Interesting. You said taking like kind of bigger swings on the greenfield there in a sense. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense from a, just a clean slate essentially. Like as you mentioned, the brownfield is more mature, right? And how do we, figure out how to navigate around, what's already established in that operation there. So Kyle, from your perspective, I mean, how do you advise from your side to approach those two different kind of facility types, right? Like the existing operation that's already in play, and then, kind of a brand new operation where, the possibilities are potentially endless, I guess, in a sense, right?
I think that as you have existing facilities, if you've done some sort of pre-plan and some sort of, we're going to grow into this operation within this building, hopefully, you've planned for some of the expansion project that you might be considering. If not, it can become more complicated, right? Because you're going to be disrupting a lot of things and activities that you're doing for installation with material and lay down space, testing and integration to an existing system is all going to have an impact on the existing operators. And you can very quickly sour a relationship as you're disrupting what was working very well, humming along nicely. And here we come, with brand new equipment that's supposed to improve your life and your operations, and it has a negative effect. So it can scare off future investment and future expansion. Greenfield site, you certainly have more of an open sandbox to play in, and testing milestones aren't going to impact operations as long as we hit, the key timeline and delivery date, so that we're not slipping on go live, and the realization of this investment can happen on time for a customer. That's kind of your key point. But, the operations folks, keeping that existing site running is kind of the priority anytime we're doing brownfield work.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. Is like, you don't want to come into brownfield and like make things worse, right? It's like, all right, we're coming in, there's more pressure. Like, we got to make this like, better than it was. And as you said, it's like, all right, well, we're changing, the folks that are working there, the way they do things potentially. And there's the whole change management aspect there. Whereas greenfield, it's like, okay, well, we got more time to potentially test. We got more, we're not working around operations that are still working too as well, and figuring out that whole aspect to be able to do that. So, I mean, Jeff, you mentioned taking, big swings on greenfield. I mean, in the new Pennsylvania site, is there anything you're doing differently than what you've done in existing sites?
Yeah, there are a few things. I would say one of the best things that, to their credit, Toyota has provided or been consistent about has been the training and the documentation process. And that's something that, simulation is also helping us with right now, especially with some AI tools, some proprietary, some off the shelf. But to provide that training material with a model that you can play with, and you can tweak the assumptions, and you can sort of test different scenarios, you can really create a physical playbook for your operators. And I think what that's been able to unlock for us with this new design, since we'll do a travel team or an away team type training where they'll go to a similar site, train up on that, run shifts for about a week, and then go to their home site, be ready to launch. And when a site like North Las Vegas and Bethlehem are different in almost every way, from footprint, layout, and while they have similar components, driving the car is going to be a totally different experience. And when we take these bolder bets, or you try a design with this bidirectional shoe sorter, so now we can feed our receive lines, our manual steps like prep, and you can also get it directly onto a truck or into an auto bagging line. When you do that, then you've got to be able to show the operators how to do it as well, and do it with confidence. And you can really shrink that learning curve, or that ramp up period, if they've had virtual models to play with in addition to the physical model. But if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have the sort of, confidence or boldness to be able to say, well, we think we can design a Ferrari. Now we just have to train Ferrari drivers, because it will demand a more talented, more experienced operator to run a more complex machine. So you can either go, really bet on your ability to recruit those top shelf operators, or you could try to lower that skill requirement and just make it a lot more, I don't want to take any credit away from those operators, but make it a little more foolproof. And Kyle's great at being my backstop against that too. I think in the past, we've designed too lean of a recirc line, and I think he probably warned us that was going to hurt, and it did. And so we've addressed that and fixed it. But yeah, it also takes people willing to call you out and tell you when you're wrong.
Yeah. I think that's a good thing too, as well there. And even kind of going back to the familiarity thing that you said earlier in the conversation too, like, sometimes like you don't know what you don't know, right? Is the kind of classic saying there. It's like, all right, well, we think we could be a little leaner on the research line, like you mentioned, and Kyle's like, I don't know about that, right? And you're like, okay, you were right.
You're
right,
Kyle.
Yeah. You were right, Kyle. You were right. So, but I think it's really interesting to hear kind of that approach and taking that almost, I guess, established kind of baseline from the training aspect you're talking about. How do we take that and apply those learnings and things to the new things that we're putting in place there? So really interesting there to hear about kind of how you're approaching some of this and how you all are working together here on this. And I'm curious from both of you. I mean, as you look at automation, and you're both kind of looking at it from a little bit of a different lens, right? I mean, Jeff, you're concerned about like yourselves internally as Pattern, and Kyle, you're looking at kind of the market overall, not just from a Pattern's perspective, but from all your customers or potential customers' perspective. Like, I'm curious how you both are viewing like the future of automation, future of robotics, and things of that nature in the operations themselves. Because as we talked about earlier, I mean, it certainly is advancing at a rapid rate, and the different avenues that you could go down are just so many at this point. So maybe Kyle, maybe you want to tell us like how are you viewing that? How is Toyota Automated Logistics viewing that? Like, how do you see things progressing over the next few years?
I think that there's a lot of exciting technologies that are new to the marketplace. We see an explosion in automated mobile robotics, AMRs, and fleets that are scalable, less infrastructure requirement behind building out, and more adaptable to business needs in the future. And I think that flexibility with modular solutions is really the name of the game for the future. I think where traditionally you see high investment required from Fortune 500 companies to get into this space, you're now seeing a lot more smaller solutions that are going to be best fit for small to medium businesses as they dip their toes into this automation world. I think there's still going to be a learning curve, and Jeff's team has done a great job at setting the expectations for when this new system arrives and our process is different. It's going to be a little bit of a learning curve and a bumpy road to get there, but be patient with the new system, and 6 months out you'll see fruits of the labor that will pay off. So I think that as there's new technology in the marketplace that allows automation to grow outside of those more enterprise-sized businesses, I think you'll start to see small to medium-sized businesses in this world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with that, because I'm seeing the same, right, as where the spectrum of business size that is now getting kind of access to automation and things is expanding, right? It's being able to come further down market, and some of these modular things that you're talking about, like, makes that a little more accessible too. So Jeff, what about from your perspective? Like, how are you viewing the future, and how are you viewing some of these things are happening, and while still avoiding that shiny object syndrome we talked about?
I think something has remained true for me in my time here. I think we've done a good job establishing tenets around our design and growth and operations. And one of the ones that I was maybe surprised to hear when I first joined from someone I've worked with a long time, but to think about automating the software and the workflows first and the hardware second or last. And to put it another way, the last step you should take is bolt something down to the ground. There's a lot of workflow centricity, and then centricity around transportation and labor being kind of the dominant forces in the decision-making process for a lot of this. I think that for me, it's a little bit less about the hardware and what type of solutions are becoming available or becoming more commonly adopted. And it still holds true that we were trying to first automate the software and the workflow, and Pattern being, an AI company, and really trying to give more control, more transparency, and insights to our brand partners about what consumers are doing, what the marketplaces are doing with those consumers. And I think that's continuing to hold true for us the more that we try to adapt the hardware to AI or vice versa. So I would say 10 years ago, it was like data. Everybody wants more data. more, and implying that they would get more insights from that. I think what's shifting is people want more judgment in the machines to be able to know or infer what the desires of the inventory owner or the facilitator, like the 3PL, may be wanting to do, and then take the data that's already there in the data lake and say, oh, well, this actually has a better routing destination or a better AOR profile. Let's do that. I'm going to flag it, let you know, and cache how many times that's happened. Like, I think that's really the automation we spend 99% of our time talking about at Pattern. And then the equipment, is really, like I said, the messy independent job. I need to make sure that it's keeping up. But automating the software first, letting the equipment catch up, may not always be true, but it's been true for the last several years, or it's at least been, I think, a pretty winning, repeatable formula for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting too, from the data perspective of, all right, well, we collected all this data right now, like let's actually do something with it, right? Like, how do we take data and become more proactive around some of these things? And I think that's a very interesting perspective on, automating some software from that side, like the behind the scenes almost. And now, like, when it gets to the physical, like, okay, how do we translate that over to the physical hardware aspect as well? So very interesting perspectives from both of you there on kind of like where things are heading in the future looking and technology perspective from warehouse operations. So really appreciate you both coming on this show here today and talking to us a little bit about your relationship, how you've worked together, and also how you kind of just view and approach automation within the warehouse operations. I think they're very fantastic and interesting to learn on these different perspectives and how that works for you all. So appreciate you coming on. Now, Kyle, if people want to get in touch with Toyota Automated Logistics or learn more, what's the best way to do that from your end?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website does a great job. So at toyota-automated-logistics.com, I think you go there, there's a lot of resources, different divisions within Toyota that, might be a best fit for you to explore more, and then reaching out. There's regional offices throughout the U.S. And internationally, as well as our headquarters and our systems team in Indianapolis. So I'm based in Southern California. We have turnkey support out of our Southern California office, which is true for many metro areas across the U.S. Toyota Automated Logistics, as an international provider, able to support really projects around the world as well. And we've seen that and supported that with Pattern operations as well. So, I would say, reach out. We're probably closer than you think.
All right, fantastic. And Jeff, if people want to learn more about Pattern, or maybe they want to geek out with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
Like Kyle said, I think our website has a really nice overview with a lot of great videos about our different solutions, including reverse logistics. So if you want to talk about that, there's a great promotional spot on there, as well as LinkedIn and YouTube. You can always connect with me directly on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find, but also Pattern has a pretty healthy presence online as well. And I know my partners respond directly to outreach. We also have a very capable marketing customer support team. So whatever is the first link that you can find, it'll quickly get you to one of us.
All right, fantastic, and appreciate you both. We will definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com, as well as in the show notes here, so people can easily access it. So Kyle and Jeff, thank you very much for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.